Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Steve Zen. I am a gunsmith in the Wind River Valley of Wyoming. I'm here in my shop, which is unheated and uninsulated. Well, almost uninsulated, and no wood this year for the stove, so as you can see, it's not being used. I am here with a Browning rifle stock. This is off of Browning single shot. I am responding to a challenge from a forum online called the 24-Hour Campfire, where various individuals were bantering back and forth the difficulties of stripping the epoxy finishes from the Browning firearms. Their finishes are fairly thick and actually quite tough, but have a gloss to them some hunters don't like. They have a tendency to spook game in some cases. I responded that I can strip them. I said that I could strip one in about 5 minutes or thereabouts. I wish I'd said, I think I said 5 minutes or less. I wish I'd have said about 5 minutes, but we're going to see. I was challenged to do it. One gentleman said, I bet I can't do it in a half an hour. We're going to see. For the purpose of this video, what I'm going to do is narrate how I do it. I've been doing gunsmithing now for 52 years, and I've stripped a number of these. It's not near as difficult as most people think once you know the technique. I don't have any special tools. I got a standard hunting knife. This one was made by a friend of mine, Wes Whipple. He's a master knife smith. I have a World War II K-bar, which was the property of my grandfather. He flew observation aircraft off the USS California in World War II, and this was in a survival kit. And then I have a standard old hickory, just a kitchen knife. But the secret to these is to have something to sharpen with, and to, as you're going, to keep your tools very sharp, shaving sharp if possible. This is actually a rifle stock. I was challenged to do this with a shotgun stock, but I figure it's close enough. It is a Browning firearm. It is the Browning finish. The Weatherby finishes are very similar, if not identical. The same techniques can be used. Typically, you don't take the stocks off on a two-piece. On a shotgun, you will use the actual receiver of the shotgun as your handle, so to speak, to hold it, and that will expedite your work quite a bit. I don't have that luxury in this case. I volunteered to strip this stock for the gentleman for the purpose of making this video, and I said, if you'll loan me the stock that you want worked on, I'll do the work for free. But to keep him from having to deal with the federal firearms issue, the license issue and stuff, he sent me just the wood. So I will be doing this in a little bit more complex fashion than most other people would have to do it, just because I don't have the rest of the gun to hold. With that said, one of the things that is very common on just about any of the guns that have a walnut stock, especially if you live in some of the western states or the southern states, is the wood will dry out. And if you zoom in here closely, you will notice that the butt plate is standing proud above the surface of the wood, because the wood over a period of several years has shrunk down. This will be a problem for a scraper. So what I always do on a gun first is I will always make this line a continuous line. And what I do that with is simply a file, because, and don't worry about some small file marks. Of course, this is a refinish job, so when it's all done, you're going to sand it anyway. The challenge was for me to be able to take this to get it down ready for sandpaper in 30 minutes or less. For brevity's sake on this video, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to strip the right-hand side of the stock only in 15 minutes or less, if I can, to answer the challenge. And because, you know, once you've seen it, there's really no sense in boring you with further details to do the rest. So with that happy note, I would like to point out the clock so that we can keep time of this. Action. All right, I'm back. You'll notice the clock hasn't moved very much. We just bought these brand new files here just a little while ago. We've had a rather hellish morning this morning. That'll be a subject for a comedy video. But when you are ready to do this, what I don't recommend you do is pick up a file from your standard set of files. A lot of them will have little pieces of steel pinned into the teeth from working in your shop. If you're going to do a really first-class finish and you want to match one up, these are a little bit bigger, quite a bit bigger than what you need, but run down to your local hardware store and buy yourself a little 4-inch or 5-inch hand file, fine cut, to make all your lines even with. They're very inexpensive, usually $3 or less, and for the purpose of doing a high-class firearm, it's worth the $3 for you to not put a great big deep gouge into your finish that you're only going to have to sand out or work out later. If you don't have that, luxury, it's really not that big a deal, but being that I was getting to the point I needed a file anyway, I figured I would do it for the purpose of this video. So to start with, where I always start with any of these restoration jobs is if you can hook your fingernail on a grip cap or a butt plate that is standing up, the first thing you want to do is bring this all down to one plane. In carving, wood carving, we'll often call that the ground level. So what I'll do here is I'm simply going to take a standard mill file, and I'm going to even that up first. Now keep in mind, this hasn't been worked on yet, so we're going to take a look at the clock just before we go, and watch the second hand, watch the minute hand, and see if I really can put my money where my mouth is, and if I can really get this thing done in the period of time, 5 minutes or thereabouts. I'm only going to do one side of the gun, like I say, just not to get boring with it, but if I could do the whole gun in 5 minutes, I could always obviously do half the gun in 2.5 minutes. This is a little bit more complex with the checkering and the flutes and stuff like that. I might have kind of shot myself in the foot, but I don't think it'll take that long. So, looking at the clock, we are now at 14 minutes after the hour. You tell me when, Steve.
Go.
All right, first thing we're going to do is going to even this up. It won't take very long, and as I'm going, as you can see, I'm also taking off some of the finish, which is the whole object anyway. By using a brand new file, there are no pins in the teeth of the file, so you get a very smooth cut on your wood to start with. You notice how I'm putting most of the pressure on the stock wood, and that will maintain the dead flat line of the butt plate. And now you can't even hook your fingers there. Hit that toe. That toe is standing up a good 50 thousandths. That wood has shrunk that much. Perfect. Now, you would also do the same thing where it meets the metal. If there was metal on here, you're going to start from the other side. You're going to get close to it, but don't get to the point that it's actually touching the metal because you don't want to scratch it. And you're simply going to bring that finish back, and that's right down to bare wood right there. Get close, but don't take it all. Now, by using your radius, you can get these lines to the point you can follow that checkering beautifully. And you'll never take a diamond head off if you just use a nice radius to get in and around your checkering. Like that. Now notice I'm not straight up and down on my knife. That chatters. I'm leaning the knife towards me. Coming in your radius on your pistol grip, fairly easy. And the challenge was to get the stock ready for sandpaper. We're not taking it to a final finish for the challenge. We're just getting it ready to go to about 120 grit sandpaper. Now inside of these can be a little bit challenging. You come in short little strokes with a razor sharp tool. Don't try to take all the finish in one cut. Just work it out. And it doesn't take very long to get you right down to the wood. Just like that. Notice how some ways the grain wants to fight you, and it'll go with you the opposite. All I do is turn the knife into the grain. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to reposition this to give me a long stroke on it. Now I take a knife that's got a flat surface. And half of that stock right here is just about ready for sandpaper. Okay, coming in here, I just use my kitchen knife. And you'll notice that I'm not really hogging it hard. I just want to get to the point. Now, for the purpose, this is going to take me a little longer because I'm slowing down to narrate. You're not doing this. You have a lean to it, and you're using it like a snowplow. Okay, you're not trying to scrape like a bulldozer. You're using it like a plow, which will keep it from chattering. And by doing this, I can get right up to my check ring, never touch it. You know you're there when your shavings start coming off as wood as opposed to varnish. And I just keep blowing on it so it's I can see what I'm doing here. I should be wearing my glasses, but I'm not. All right, now I'm going to turn it around, lose a little bit of time there because that would not be necessary if I had the rest of the gun there. Now, again, I don't want to come off the butt this way. I want it to work like a plow, so I'm suspending the butt plate and the wood in one motion. Knife's getting a little dull. Let me go to this one. Now, there's a sling swivel hole here, so I'm going to take this at a fairly extreme angle so I don't wallow that hole out and funnel it. And just work around it. That's there. Time check. About 6 minutes. Now, I said I'd have it ready for sandpaper. I'm actually, I do a little bit more here. Now, for the demonstration, follow me around here, Steve, so you can see that it's an unbroken series of events. And get out a simple palm sander. Sorry about the messy shop, but that's the way it is. I typically work 12 hours a day. Doesn't leave me a lot of time for cleanup. Although you'd never know it by looking at it, but I do actually clean this place about once a week. Usually lasts about 3 hours. I gotta go over here and grab a piece of paper. Okay. So it looks like, to me, I was just guessing at it when I typed that I could do it in 5 minutes. I was overly optimistic there in that I've got one side ready, including the narration and moving it, in about 6 minutes. So I will cop a guilty plea that I was wrong. I can't really do it in 5 minutes, but it certainly looks like I could do it in 10 if I was all set up and I had the rest of the gun on. Take a simple palm sander. Oh, and incidentally, this is 180 grit paper, so you can see that I'm not taking a lot. This stock was not damaged. If you had damaged stocks, if you got deep dents or removed wood from various hunting accidents and stuff like that, you will take your scrapers and not allowing the scraper to come along and drop into the damage. You need to run the scraper at a fairly extreme angle over the damaged areas. And again, remember, you're trying to make it like a snowplow. You will suspend the damaged areas and you work them down in a large area around the pit And you can mostly scrape those areas right out. If you don't get them completely out, you can get about 80 or 90% out with nothing but a kitchen knife if you keep it sharp. Okay, that's 180 grit. Stop myself again to narrate. Whenever I'm working with an orbital sander or a hand sander, and there is checkering and you don't want to damage the checkering, what I do is I simply squeeze the stock in my thumb, between my thumb and my hand, so that the sander will hit my thumb and not reach over to the checkering. And by doing that, I can get pretty close. Well, you only get this too. Now, that's down to 180 grit. Again, if we look at the clock, we haven't taken that much time. As I mentioned in my post on 24-hour campfire, that if you guys are really fighting these epoxy finishes and trying the various chemical ways to strip them, all of which work, and they work just fine, but as you can see, it's really not necessary. It's not that difficult to do, and this is a more difficult job than what I'm recommending you gentlemen do, because of the fact that I don't have a good handle to hold this with, so I'm having to move around, plus I'm attempting to narrate this in an understandable fashion. We haven't done the bottom of the pistol grip, and we haven't done this border here. So if you can kind of move in sharp. Now, a flat surface such as this is difficult to work with here. You'll want some sort of a scraping implement that has a good amount of curvature to it, because when you're looking at the length of the knife, the part that is actually making contact will only be maybe a 32nd of an inch wide, and that gives you a great deal of control when you're working around the checkering patterns so that you don't damage them. Now, I think we're going to have to switch sides here, Steve, because I'm right-handed and I'm kind of a buffoon with my other hand. Short, little controlled strokes. Again, not trying to take all the finish at once. Just working it out in little controlled strokes. And by rocking the radius this way, you'll notice I have bare wood and then finish, which is about half thick. By using the technique, what you want to be aware of is the angle of the handle that you're lifting up. As you lift it up, of course, you're getting closer and closer to the checkering. And you get it right down to the point you're touching the border without ever touching the checkering. And that, gentlemen, is just about ready for your sandpaper right there. Anyway, that's basically what I wanted to show, is that buying specialized tools for this kind of stuff usually isn't necessary. What you will want is, and they don't even have to be knives, they could just be good quality pieces of steel. Whatever you want to buy from a knife supply shop, like what a knife maker might buy. Have one that has a flat surface on it, one that has a good radius on it, and then if you do a lot of stock finishing, I might even recommend that you take one and run yourself a radius which is very tight, say about a 1-inch radius. I happen to have a scraper here somewhere, I think, which is one of my inletting scrapers. Well, I guess I don't. But it has a radius that is about as big as the end of my finger. And by using something like that, you can come in and you can just touch these little areas and really save yourself an awful lot of time later on. Just like that. Like I say, that isn't a dead perfect finish. It wasn't meant to be. What we're looking for is one that is ready for the sandpaper. Last little tip for you gentlemen is that when you are working, for example, with flutes or with any type of a flute behind a pistol grip, any place where you have to get in a radius, it will save you an awful lot of time to take an ordinary piece of pine, cut it, sand it, grind it, and get it to fit that radius. It's fairly fast because the pine is so soft. And then when you have a real good fit of, basically a male-female fit, take your sandpaper, and always with a fairly fine grit, something of say 220 or finer, and glue it to your sanding stick, so that effectively what you're making is what I would call a form-fitting file. So when it lays in here and you work it back only about a half an inch, you work it back and forth, it will conform to this area perfectly, leaving you a nice sharp edge, which is one of the hallmarks of good stock work, is that all your flutes, all your edges, cheek piece, bead lines, everything should be 90 degrees sharp, look like the edge of a folded piece of paper if you can do it. The way to do that is not to simply wrap the sandpaper around the stick, because whenever you do that, you can never keep it tight enough to keep the sandpaper from getting a wave in it, and it will knock off these sharp, crisp lines. So when you're ready to actually finish this work, do yourself a favor, make yourself the tools for the particular job. It sounds complex, it actually is extremely simple. When I get ready to finish this stock for this gentleman, I'll be making a radius stick for this and for the flutes. The actual manufacture of the specific tools for this stock will take me about 3 or 4 minutes. Then you glue the sandpaper on, leave it a good 20 minutes for the glue to dry because you don't want that sandpaper to move at all. A few little strokes here, corresponding strokes on the other side. That one's done. You get it down to 320 grit, whisker it a few times, throw the tool away. You'll make a new one on the next one. These types of radiuses here you can often do with nothing more than a hardware store dowel. Don't try to wrap the entire dowel in sandpaper. Cut yourself a strip so wide, put glue on the dowel, lay the sandpaper strip on it, and iron it down so you have half the radius of the dowel wrapped in sandpaper, glued down, and then you can just simply use it like a file. By taking it to 320 or even 400 grit, you don't even have to worry about going with the grain, because the striations from the grit of the sandpaper are finer than the actual porosity of the wood. So once your scratches are smaller than the pores of the wood, which direction they go is totally irrelevant. And that is what I wanted to demonstrate, gents. So as you can see, this surface here, and I've still got the other side of the stock, but this surface here, I could have that down to 400 grit, including whiskers, and be ready for oil probably in 20 minutes from right now. And this entire video, as you can see, even with me taking more time than to talk than to work, has been, what, 15 minutes?
Worst case, I'd say about 17.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it. I hope that helps you guys out. Happy hunting. We'll see you next time.